All right, welcome to the Sports Guys. We have another excellent episode for you tonight, a really interesting and timely topic in the world of sports, and that is name, image, and likeness, NIL, and this is the monetization of college athletics. And we have a really special guest for you tonight, somebody who's right in the thick of it, just started a company a couple of years ago, and he started really right at the front end of this whole new system that we've got in college sports. So I want to introduce Cam Wyrick. How you doing, Cam?
Doing great, guys. Happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks so much
joining
for
us.
joining us tonight. We really appreciate it in your perspective. Rob, how you doing, man?
Great. Ready to talk about some NIL. I've been really focusing in lately on campus activities and lots of sports. This is an amazing football season going, and really excited to get into this topic tonight.
Agreed. Yeah, we've had a couple of guests on before to talk about it. You know, Brad Moore, Jackson Moore. We didn't even know before we lined up Cam for this interview that he knows both of them in kind of a really runaround way, but that was interesting. But Cam, tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you came from, your NC State years, and maybe how you got into this business.
Fantastic. I'll make that quick because I want this to be about NIL and not about me. But very, very quickly, about 28 years and two different Fortune 300 companies, and was kind of doing some thoughts and doing some roundtable in here with my wife about what retirement and/or semi-retirement might look like. And I got to tell you guys, I've been watching what NIL was doing at the college level, and I was watching a system with zero guardrails. Snowball effect is kind of the perfect analogy I give, where the snowball starts small and things start
Mhm.
going downhill, and that snowball just gets bigger and bigger. And so
Mhm.
we had a real serious discussion one morning over here, and it was because I heard the day before that this NIL snowball was about to hit our high schoolers and our middle schoolers, and it was at that point where I said, "Hun, I think it's time." No hero capes here, guys, and you're not going to hear that from me tonight, but I just want you to know I got in this to help the kids. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what we've been doing ever since. And we've helped high schoolers, we've helped a middle schooler, and then, of course, we've got plenty of college athletes who are on the docket as well. So that was the kind of the genesis of why we ended up here.
Well, now you want to make me say thank you for your service, and I really mean that because the kids are what it's all about. They're our future,
Amen.
and
Yeah,
what a great reason to do it. So,
absolutely.
so how'd you get started? I mean, this wasn't really your background. You did have a lot of corporate background, but how'd you get started in NIL? How did you start on day one?
Very good. So the first thing you want to do is you want to be legal because your job is to keep the kids legal. And that's my number one. Number one thing I'm responsible for is their eligibility and making sure all rules are followed. And so the first part of being any sort of athlete agent is to get licensed and to make sure you've had the proper training and been through everything you need to make sure you can represent these families appropriately.
Mhm.
So licensing was first. I definitely had a string of luck just from a 30-year friendship with a guy who kind of helped co-found this with me. Steve Kime is his name, and Steve was for many years the GM of the Arizona Cardinals.
Mhm.
And Arizona had some high school laws that were very, very different from the state of North Carolina at that time. And so he and I birthed this thing, and I went out to Arizona, and we really, really got kick-started out there. I assume we'll talk about this a little bit more, but in North Carolina at the time, private schools were allowed NIL, but public schools were not. And it
Mhm.
was the only state in the United States of America that was saying that rather than it's either allowed or it's not. And
Mhm.
so that there were some
Interesting.
challenges that maybe we can get into, but really got this thing kickstarted in Arizona, learned a lot, and have now moved into the Carolinas and all over the rest of the country.
That's great. I watched some of Steve's clips just to kind of get to know him a little bit. He is an impressive guy, and that is
Amen. You
such an
bet.
awesome partnership the two of you guys have with BrandBoss. That's great. Super cool. Do you think LeBron James would have been maybe the largest NIL deal out of high school if he had been in the NIL era? I
No
mean,
doubt about it. I
I mean, he
mean,
would have
no,
been.
no. Yeah, I remember him on the cover of Sports Illustrated was in high school, just like it was yesterday. Of course, there's always the Jordan story about him getting cut in high school, but LeBron didn't get cut.
No,
Okay.
he had
Yeah,
ESPN at his high school.
he did. He changed everything. He sure did.
So in the old days, you were really stud quarterback. You had Nick Saban come sit in your living room. You had Lane Kiffin. You had all these guys come sit. Do you also have your agent now and your NIL representative and your tax representative? I guess your team has grown, right? If you're stud quarterback or even any type of athlete?
Well, I've remained fairly lean and mean only because Steve has such a reach to so many different places. And so quite frankly, I handle the NIL portion of this, and he still helps me amongst some other things that he's now into. He helps us with recruiting services and with potentially just training athletes, evaluating them for figuring out where they fit, some transfer portal evaluations. So we're lean. The main thing you've got to have, Tom, is you got to have a Tom Pope with what I'm doing, because a lot of people who call themselves agents are actually attorneys who've applied for agent licensing. And that's not my model, nor am I an attorney. I want to be a sports agent representing the kid, the family, and we'll talk about how
Gotcha.
passionate I am about representing the brand as well. But I do have hired counsel. Mike Ingersoll is with a large firm here in town, and Mike helps me, and you'll see him all kinds of Charlotte magazines for up and comer in the NIL biz. But we have a very cool marriage because I get to be an agent and he gets to be an attorney.
Okay.
And I think that's very, very simplistic in terms of just, hey, he knows where his role is, I know where my role is, and we work collectively in a system here where the snowball, it just got bigger again today. So
Are you finding that it sounds like, maybe I heard this correctly, but it sounds like it started out very much where there were two sets of laws that were pretty distinct. Are you saying that there were like 50 separate laws and just they were all completely different? And are we snowballing towards one set of laws? Is that how you feel
man,
the trajectory is, or is it something else?
great question. So in North Carolina, the one law was we're going to let private schools have it because they're their own athletic association, but public
Right.
schools, we want to keep what we call amateur status. It
Mhm.
doesn't belong here and we don't need it. In 30 other states at the time, NIL was allowed, and then there were others who were saying no at the time, but still doing a little bit of this. So you might have seen in the news, but we've got 5 or 6 states left who haven't approved it yet. Ohio happens to be one of those, but there's a lot going on in Ohio that is stemming from a case here in the Carolinas that BrandBoss was involved with, that's saying, how much longer can we keep these kids down and keep them from an opportunity to take advantage of their name, image, likeness without ever wearing their high school colors, without ever filming content on the high school campus? But how can we not allow these kids to monetize in some states and allow them to do it in others? And it's gotten to be a big deal. Texas, guys, Texas high school football, everybody knows about Texas. Well, Texas is the only state I know of right now that you cannot monetize your name, image, likeness as a high schooler until you become age 17. And you can't see a dollar of it until you actually get to college and enrolled, even though you made the money when you were 17. Okay.
Interesting.
So think about high school Friday night lights and Texas. Think about Ohio not having NIL at all. And quite my opinion is I don't believe they're going to be able to put it off that much longer.
Mhm.
When a case went to court in North Carolina for public schoolers, there's the number one quarterback in the nation, class of 2026, and I'll use no names today, but there were some parents who were upset about him not being able to capitalize as a public school student. The State Board of Ed was then sued, and it did not take long to deliberate and allow NIL. The very next thing that this young man did is he signed a trading card deal for 7 figures. And that's as a 17, 18-year-old high schooler. But that was what his
Yeah.
parents were so upset about. They knew it was there, but just because he
Yep.
played high school football in a public school in North Carolina, he wasn't allowed to cash
That's
in.
crazy.
Yeah.
So it
So when
sounds like we really do still have 50 laws. I mean, every state treats it a little bit differently. We're still in
Well, it
that
sounds like
situation.
there's half that don't allow, or no, you said five that don't allow it, and now there are, I guess, 45 that do. Is that what
The
you're saying?
majority, and those numbers are awfully close, Rob. I'm not far
Complicated.
off, but I'll just tell you that the majority do allow it now. And
Gotcha.
then there are a few misnomers like Texas where, yeah, we allow it, but you got this set of rules you got to play by. You can't
Gotcha.
monetize it until you're 17, and you can't even see the money till down the
So are
road.
they allowed to have money coming in, but they're not allowed to touch it until they're,
Yeah, we're essentially parking that money for them
yeah.
until they get to college is
That's
a
interesting.
very
Probably,
complex piece of the puzzle.
So
probably
it's
an
really a
inspo
laboratory of
account.
a few different ideas that are sort of working themselves out.
No doubt. No doubt. And guys, you can imagine my day every day is waking up and just jumping into NIL news to see what changed overnight. I know we're going to talk about the
I'll
House
just
settlement today, but what a whirlwind of keeping me sharp up top up here is we mentioned Tom being an attorney, and Rob, I know you're a smart guy, but man, you got to be smart to keep up with all this, and then
you
by
really
Yeah.
do.
state.
And just think
So,
about all the portal rules. Do you stay on top of the portal rules too? Or
oh yeah,
And
oh yeah,
I think that's really why it's hard to get good content out there because it's changing so fast. Nobody can keep up with it until it kind of settles into a pattern, right? So um I did have a question. Growing up, generations, decades, um, one after the other, there were parents who would move to put their kid into a school district in order to have them go to that high school so that they could be the star running back and get a shot at a D1 school or, you know, are you finding parents are moving so they can take advantage of NIL?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know
It,
that.
it
That's
is.
brand new to me.
Unequivocally, and listen, I'm talking to athletic directors both here locally and elsewhere. I'm talking to superintendents. And by the way, the boss at most of these campuses in high school is the principal. I've got two different things going on. I've got certain entities who are saying, Cam, I hear you. I know NIL's here, but we'll deal with it when it gets here. And then I've got some entities that are saying, you know what, sounds great, Cam, but I just don't want to deal with that. And I believe both of those are a mistake because it is now legal in most of these states to build on, and I'm speaking high school now because we already know where college is and we'll go there. But from a high school perspective, if you built a solid NIL following and did it legally based on state law, and a kid is transferring to North Carolina from Texas who's a 7-star quarterback and a sure thing, and his parents are looking where to go, where are they going to look, Rob, Tom? They're going to look to the high school program that has the most solid
Oh
NIL
yeah.
backing, aside from winning state championships and good
Mhm.
pedigree. But
Yeah.
I
And those
believe
probably
these.
would go together, honestly.
Well, they absolutely go together.
Yeah.
Listen, they do. We'll get into this too, guys. But the problem in high school and college, if I was to kind of put my finger on one thing that is holding a lot of us back, is donor exhaustion. Okay, there is donor exhaustion out here, and raising dollars is tougher than ever. NIL is still here. There are still plenty of people who are figuring out how they can use it to their advantage. But golly, man, these donors are just, they're exhausted.
Mhm.
So, we got to kind of keep a pulse on that too, because Tom Pope has $5,000 that he can give to the University of Virginia next year.
Mhm.
Tom probably doesn't really care whether 2,500 of it go to NIL and 2,500 go to the Wahoo Club. But guess what? The Wahoo Club cares because the Wahoo Club's used to getting 5,000 a year from you, Tom.
Yeah.
So
Right.
your 5,000 is still that same 5,000.
Mhm.
Okay. But now part of it's got to go to NIL. And that's where some of these collectives are really struggling is
Mhm.
that, there's donor exhaustion and it's a problem.
I've
Mhm.
been
And
wondering
it's
something. I want to make sure I ask it before I forget because I'll space out and be mad at myself for not asking. Uh, what happens in the college level when they sign an NIL deal and they get hurt?
Mm, mm. So the devil's in the details. So it all depends on how the contract is written. But these are mostly from the standpoint of, and this used to be terminology you couldn't use, but now you can with the house settlement. These are pay for play deals. So the majority of these deals have language loaded in that if you're not on the field, that there is less compensation, no
Okay.
compensation. And in a few cases with the upper echelons, those contracts are ironclad. But you just have to understand these aren't NFL dollars quite yet.
Mm.
And so these
No.
colleges feel like they need to be protected to an extent.
Mhm.
So, but I hate to give you kind of a flat line here, but it is very much by college and by contract and what the college is willing to do to get you in the first place. So,
No, I think it would kind of mirror NFL contracts in that if you really want to get the big time player, you're going to do guaranteed. And, I'm sure it'll be somewhere in that kind of myriad where you can't ask a simple question about NFL contracts. They're all different and they're
right.
all
That's
based
right.
on what the player is like. And so
Mhm.
it makes sense that there's not a simple answer, but I think
If
the logical, you put logic to it. I mean,
if I
it
could
makes sense.
elaborate too, Rob, because I think you would want to know this. If my deal to come play quarterback at the University of Virginia is a $400,000 deal to transfer from, UCLA,
Mhm.
I want you and Tom to understand for sure that the majority of these contracts look like this. They're year to year. So back
Hmm.
when we came out of high school, I signed with you. I was signing a 4-year deal to come play football, and you were giving me a free education, room and board. Nowadays, I'm signing a 4-year deal for 400,000, but it's $100,000 a year. So my
Mhm.
freshman year, I come in, I do what I'm supposed to, I stay healthy, all goes well, I get 100 grand, right? But I'm not getting 400 grand front loaded on the
Mhm.
majority of these deals. It's spread out, and they're just call
Yeah.
them year contracts. And I would want
Hmm.
your listeners to be aware of that, because I think everybody sees 400,000 and they think the kid's rich immediately.
And
I'm
And
glad you said that.
isn't part of the reason for that because the athlete wants some flexibility too? I mean, Virginia this year has this fantastic quarterback, Chandler Morris, but he's at his fourth school in college. He's in his
absolutely.
fifth year in his fourth school, and he wanted the flexibility. He wanted to be able to go from Oklahoma to North Texas to Virginia.
There you
So
go.
wasn't that part
And
of it
That,
too? The athlete
And
wants to
Tom,
that
play.
kind
their argument and the kids' argument, and I back the kids on this. The argument is, well, listen, my coach has been allowed to do it for years. My coach recruits me for 3 years of high school football, and I fall in love with him, and I want to be part of his program. And I get there, and in a year, he gets a bigger
Mhm.
deal, and he's gone. And oh, by the
Yep.
way, he gets a buyout when he
Yep.
leaves. You know, these
Yes.
kids aren't getting buyouts yet, but
So
they just
then,
want a piece of what's right. And that is, we're on our way to doing better at making this thing right.
how do you
I think
feel
it's
about Dabo Sweeney and Nick Saban and Tony Bennett, our basketball coach, all these guys who essentially left college athletics because they feel that this new system is so unsavory and they can't get a kid and develop them for 4 years, and that's what they
I,
want to do.
I think a 10-year ago me would have said, I'm not sure that I understand, but today I'm older and I'm grumpier and I'm wiser. And I understand why some coaches of that pedigree who have had so much success don't want to deal with the day to day that this takes. And by the way, you're coaching kids now to keep them, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. I'm not saying we
You,
don't coach talent anymore, but you have to coach them. I always say this: if one of them messes up, nowadays we sort of expect them to give the kid a back massage, right? And then if he throws another pick the very next possession, well, I, as the coach, I need to give him a little bit deeper massage. And that's a little bit extreme. I understand, but please understand too, they're fundamental coaches out here doing a great job. But man, they got to
right?
coach to keep.
Rob and I talk about this literally almost every week about how you are ending up recruiting your own kids and you're begging them in some ways to stay the next year. If you can get 2 or 3 years out of them, you're good. But
Indeed,
you're literally recruiting your own guys every year.
indeed.
Well,
And
one of
that's
the
where the
part of the
Sabans and
recruit.
the Sabans and the Dabos, I've talked about donor exhaustion. I don't want to speak for them. I just got to believe that there's some exhaustion there. It's
Mhm.
not what I'm here to coach these kids and make them better and make them good husbands and dads and
Mhm.
win some games. And I'm not saying there's not plenty of that out here. I'm just saying there's a whole new level of coach to
Mhm.
keep.
And there's no
Yeah.
loyalty on
Mm.
either side. Yeah. What were you going to
Well,
say, Rob?
there is. It's just more complicated than it used to be because there's more pressures pulling you in different directions. One thing that was interesting was that Jackson Moore talked about how a lot of guys he knew who had NIL weren't very savvy as to how it all works, and they would rip through all their money and owe a ton in taxes and get in big trouble. So,
And
um, if the players are struggling with how to handle all this, imagine the fan who doesn't even understand the whole deal in that capacity. The other thing is, um, coaches need to constantly recruit their players. One of the biggest things they can sell is the vision of what this program could be if you stay. And so I think that the good ones now have changed from it just being about recruiting to being a salesperson of what our program is headed towards. And I think they have to have
Mhm.
tangible things they can point to. I think about the Virginia football program is in so much better shape than it was 3 years ago. And somehow he's selling this vision and getting people to come and it's working. And even
But,
though, we might be
but,
overseeded right now at 15, if you step back from that and you look at the landscape and let's say you're a fan of Oregon or whatever. You want to think of Oregon staying at that top tier. You don't want to see any kind of dipping going down, because it may not come down to money, because money might be fairly equal between three choices. But if I stay at Oregon, I'm going to see this through and kind of ride it upward towards the national championship. So
But do you see,
coaches are recruiting
Cam,
by selling a vision
A
as well.
vision.
Yeah.
do you see, Cam, lots of motivations for these guys? Like Jackson said, the reason he left Kentucky and went to App State was playing time. The only way he's going to make it to an NFL training camp one day and get a chance to kick is if he actually plays in college. So, so do you see that some people want playing time, some people want NIL, some people want the education, the whole experience on campus?
I do. I do. I will tell you that I do see enough to know this, and I still believe ballers want a ball. I believe
Mhm.
that playing time is the epitome of what, everybody has come up, worked so hard, no matter what your sport and what your trade is. You go to the lab every day and you're refining that craft, and you want to be on that field no matter what. And then the dollars kind of come extra. But are there instances where it's 100% about the money and then playing time is whatever it is? Can't say I blame them. I mean, guys,
Yeah.
everything you just said, Rob, you were giving me chill bumps on, because everything you just described is one of the potential scenarios that is on the table. And that is, you just described to me a situation where a vision is laid out and people want to be a part of it and they thrive. Doesn't that sound a lot like corporate America, Rob and Tom?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the magic
Vision
question,
statements and all that. Yeah.
the magic question, and will we end up there, is, are these kids going to end up being employees of these universities? And we're not prepared to talk about that or answer that today, because the House settlement is so new. But that's
Mhm.
vision. That's corporation, what you said, Rob.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
know what? Tony Elliott's been successful at doing that. And I haven't looked up what his NIL budget is, and I know it's a prestigious university, but I can guarantee you that guy's running a lot thinner than Texas Tech is. And
Yeah.
That's
yet,
right.
Oh yeah.
and yet
Texas
he,
Tech. Yeah.
and yet he's still coaching them up. So I believe in the fundamental principle of the fact that if you want to coach these kids, just like I want to help these kids with
Mhm.
NIL, that you coach them up and you make them the best player they can be, and you give them a fair wage. And some of them are going to require a little bit more than fair. You got to make decisions about that, but take care of them, coach them up, create a culture, and you'll win some ball games. I do believe that. It's just that a Dabo Swinney, who is so great at that, he may be getting tired of that,
Yeah.
of having
Yeah,
to chase that piece of it. So
that
Well,
makes
he
sense.
he was always kind of resistant to the transfer portal, so that puts him at a disadvantage, even though he has so many advantages from a coaching standpoint. He's bringing in fewer options into his program, which that's hurting his program. That's why his team's not quite as good, even though he's still just as good a coach. And I think he's at a crossroads. He needs to decide: am I too exhausted to do this pivot
Yeah.
to a new system,
And
or do I have the juice to go for chapter two, which is a totally different looking chapter in my coaching career? And
And
I
that's
think
literally why Tony Bennett walked away. That's why Jay Wright walked away. That's why Saban walked away. They didn't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with NIL collectives. They don't want to deal with portal. They don't want to deal with 1-year contracts. They want a guy for 4 to 5 years, and they want to build him all the way up to the top. Like you said, it's not just
but
football for them. It's creating
look
good fathers, good
but look
leaders.
how cool it is that the vacuum is being filled by a bunch of awesome young
Mhm.
coaches. I
mhm,
wouldn't call Kurt Signetti young, but he's fairly new on the scene at this level.
Mhm.
Dan Lanning and all these guys have kind of been the next group, and they're all about the new way, and it's pretty
Mhm.
cool
the new
as it
studs.
unfolds. Yeah,
You know what we do, guys? I mean, I hate to get too deep here, but we're creatures. Creatures adapt.
Mhm.
yeah,
And we don't adapt as we age. We don't adapt quite like we used to. But a younger generation of coach who's kind of growing up in this is a little bit more adaptable. And I think what you just
yeah.
said is exactly what we're starting to see, and that is the energy is still there. Look at this Dan Campbell cat at the Detroit Lions. I know we're not
Love him.
talking about NIL there, but you want
He's
to
my
talk about
favorite.
energy in a locker room. I mean, that
Yeah.
guy, I'll run through a wall for that guy, and I never played for him, just watching
Well,
what I do. And
you,
so well done. I will say this, if I may, and that is I'm able to give my opinions on this. And I would tell
Oh yeah.
you, as a former high school player, it is a very, very tough day to be a high school football or basketball player wanting and having a dream of coming out and automatically going Power 5 D1. We have
Mhm.
made that extremely difficult to do. It will absolutely happen. I don't want to shatter anybody's dreams and I want them to go for it. But I do think some of these 4 and 5 star high schoolers are going to have to kind of come to the realization that I may need to go somewhere else first
Yep.
to get to where I want to
Mhm.
go to,
Mhm.
Michigan,
Mhm.
Ohio State, because I'm going to be 2 years bigger, faster, stronger, because those rosters are going to be 100% filled by transfer portal talent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm really going to have to be some kind of misnomer in high school in most cases to really come right out and go D1 over the next few years. It's
Yeah.
just getting tough.
That's part
You
of it,
might
but
have to go to
also if
James Madison in
Jamie,
yep.
order to go to Ohio State. You know what I
heck
Also
mean?
yeah,
if I'm
heck
the
yeah.
third string running back at Georgia and I'm a 4 star, I'm not going to sit there for 2 or 3 years and wait. I'm going to go to Memphis. I'm going to go to JMU. I'm going to go to one of the smaller schools and I'm going to kick butt. And then I'm going to
Mhm.
transfer to Georgia
You
in my
sure
third year
are.
to be a starter.
You go
So
into
it's
that
kind of
transfer
like,
portal and negotiate your deal, and you're going to make some money, but you may have to go somewhere else first to pay your dues. Guys, hasn't baseball been doing it all along? Aren't we
Mhm.
creating farm leagues in
Mhm.
that's what I
football
was
and
about to
That's what
say.
it
basketball
is.
now? I mean, that's what we're doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
It's
exactly
Um,
right.
just like baseball. That's what I was just about to say. You go to the D2 schools or the lesser D1 schools. Those are your, you know,
So
triple A
Cam,
minor league teams.
I agree with that. It is very similar to baseball. So Cam, you said that Rob gave you goosebumps. You've given me goosebumps twice. I want to talk about both topics. The first one is your commitment to helping the kids. So I want to get a little more into that. But then I also want to get into some of the other sports. We know football is king. We know basketball is the prince. And then we know everything else is kind of, trailing behind that. But I think some of the sports, you mentioned a gymnast down at, I think it was LSU or somewhere down there who
Yeah.
is making multi-million dollars a year, and
Livy
there's a lot
Dunn.
of
what have you
opportunities. Yeah.
done? Mhm.
So talk about that. Talk about some of the other sports and your commitment to helping them.
Well, the first piece, and we promise no Superman capes, but the part I'm overly passionate about is that in the high school realm, I'm dealing with a lot of kids locally, Arizona, Texas, and other states as well, but majority Carolinas, who do not understand exactly what Jackson was talking about. And that is Mr. Cam's able to garner you $1,000 deal based on your TikTok and Instagram portfolio and your body of work. So we got $1,000 coming in, but it's not $1,000. It's $840 because we have to pay taxes on that money. And unfortunately, particularly in the high school realm, these kids are not getting that education. If it's not coming from their parents, it certainly is not coming from their high school for the reason I stated earlier. And that's the majority of these high schools are acting like this isn't here. And it is. And there's agents out here after these high schoolers, whether the school is going to say they want to be a part of it and or whether they're going to educate them on what to do once you do. So fortunately, a lot of these kids do have good parents. But as you guys know, that's not always the case. I am in plenty of living
That's right.
rooms where I'm with an athlete and a grandmother, and they're extremely thankful for me, but they're not near as thankful for me as I am of them because they're giving me a chance to do what my passion is, and that
Mhm.
is teach the kid what we've got to do with a grant. I won't get into this other than just to say this, but our business philosophy is my vision at BrandBoss, and it's a give, save, live mentality. It's give of our first fruits, and whatever that means to
Mhm.
you, that is your deal. But I want you to help other people with a portion of what we earn. I want you to
Mhm.
save, number two, for your future, and it's what I'm going to preach. And then you know what? You've worked hard, young man, young lady. So
Mhm.
let's take that third, or however you want to divvy it up, but let's take a third piece and let's go buy us something nice if that's
Mhm.
what you want to do because you've worked your hind end off. So
Hmm.
so there's the kid part of it. Tom
Mhm.
is that's what we're doing, and I haven't seen a lot of others doing what I am because I think the philosophy is that there's not a lot of money in high school, and that's
Mhm.
fine, but we're not technically doing it just for that. We're doing it to help the peeps. So
Interesting.
so that's the
That's
kid
cool.
piece. And then the secondary piece was what, Tom?
Just some of the other sports that you're seeing, like what's number 3, what's number 4, what's number 5? What are you seeing in
Okay.
terms of what sports are coming along that are really building some NIL momentum?
Well, in case all of your viewers have been under a rock for the last 2 years, there is no hotter commodity beyond football and basketball than a lady named Miss Caitlin Clark. She has
Mhm.
redesigned and revamped everything that is going on in the WNBA and women's basketball from little leagues all the way up.
For sure.
So women's basketball, watch out. I believe that
Mhm.
there's a nationwide craze right now for the sport of rugby. And I have not learned the rules to rugby yet, but I have watched a scary percentage of America from a
Well,
football
Cam,
guy here speaking, saying, I'm going to quit football and I'm going to start playing rugby. So we're keeping our eye on that.
so
I
Cam, to
played in
let you
high
know,
school.
Rob played in high school, played rugby, so he's a
Rugby.
rugby guy.
There you
And
go.
secondly, we did a whole episode on rugby. You may want to check it out because we go
I
through the
will.
rules and everything. Yeah. So,
Okay. Well,
yep.
we're learning the players there and who the gear is and who the ball manufacturers, but we're, as an agent, I'm certainly having to pay attention to that. And then, Tom, is the piece that you're allowing me to articulate as best I can here. And that is, and we'll close with this too, but I want your viewers to know NIL is not just football and basketball, everybody out there. NIL is for all athletes who find themselves in a situation where they want to work hard, they want to be marketable, they want to better themselves. I have another philosophy that I'd like to share, and that is, as your agent, I would rather you guys, Tom, Rob, I would rather you bring me a 3-star player who has 150,000 or 100,000 followers on TikTok or Instagram than I would you bring me a 5-star football player who doesn't have any followers.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And I don't know how that strikes you, but from an
Interesting.
agent perspective and helping kids, male and female, soccer players, golfers, football players, basketball players, rugby players, doesn't matter. If you want to build an NIL brand for yourself and you want to monetize it, I think you need to be on the field of play. I don't know if you're riding the pine, if you can do too much with NIL nowadays, but you don't have to be a star. NIL is for everybody who wants to work on it.
Hmm.
Interesting. That's a really interesting
Fascinating.
perspective. Yeah. So, final question for you, and then we're going to get into some of the material. How do you find your recruits? How do you find the people you work with? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? Is it through referrals? Is it your partner who's out there in the field? How do you typically get the people coming in?
Luckiest man in America. You won't hear many founders say this, but my marketing budget is zero, and it's a very, very intentional, and it's for a couple of different reasons. But number one, if you put your heart into it and you do a good job for a kid, and particularly for that entire family, word of mouth travels fast. And so that's one, is that I've been getting all kinds of referrals. And if I have an issue right now at BrandBoss, I don't want to turn anybody off. I want to be real. But the issue is I've got more kids that I would love to help today than I technically have brand deals on the other side of it. So I'm having to be a little bit selective about who we bring on, only because I don't want to disappoint you. If we
Mhm.
bring you on, I want to make sure that we can market you and marry
Mhm.
you to some brands that can build a nice long relationship and help you. But there's a lot of kids, and unfortunately, there are some brands who just haven't quite caught on to the fact that, get this,
Mhm.
guys, an athlete garners 3 times more attention on social media than a brand influencer.
Hmm.
Wow,
Okay. I want you to process that again. That is
that's
not my
incredible.
data, and that is across all athletes. So I want you to grab that. An athlete, for all the companies out there, presidents, marketing people listening, call BrandBoss, because I'm telling you, these athletes garner 3x the attention. And here's what's amazing about that stat is you have to understand, and you guys do, an athlete has class, they have weight room, they have training table, they have tutor, they have film sessions, then they have another practice session, then they have another tutor, an influencer. And some of them are doing very, very well, but I'm talking about people who influence on social media
Mhm.
who do not play a sport. They get to sit around all day and make content. Athletes
Mhm.
don't have that luxury, and yet they garner 3 times the attention because they're an athlete, for businesses who choose to build a plan that can help generate ROI using this athlete and helping this athlete with their product. So
It's really interesting. It's interesting. Rob mentioned one of the gymnasts earlier who's really made a total killing in the whole NIL area.
Livy
But
Dunn. Yeah.
But you have the Cavinder twins down at University of Miami. Those two twins have really figured out a way to make it happen. They've got
Angel Reese.
millions of followers. You've got Paige Sporanic, who was a college golfer and who's made a complete career of being a YouTuber and just basically shows you her golf swing every day. So there's just a lot of different ways to do this whole world, isn't there? It's not just
and Livy has graduated, as an example, and the Cavender twins are either there or on their way. But here's the point: is they started what they're doing as an athlete. They brought brands a lot of attention. They brought themselves a lot of attention, but now they've built themselves a portfolio for life. If they choose to leave athletics and all the NIL rules and things that they have to follow as an athlete and move into the real world without those guardrails and continue to kill it. And man, isn't that the beauty of NIL? Is if we can teach you how to do it and to give, save, live, and do the right things with what you're doing and do it the right way, we can build a future for you.
So let's say you have a kid come to you at 17 and wants to partner with you all the way through college, maybe all the way through their pro career, whatever sport it is. And then they leave sports and don't have the rules on them anymore, but they want to continue to work with you. Can they do that? I mean, will you
Absolutely.
have a lifetime?
That we're 2 years in our infancy, and so that has yet to happen yet, but it is absolutely a part of it. And then I partner with a couple different people who are life after sport, and they're teaching a life skill, a life set of skills that help you beyond sport. Because guys, whether you know it or not, a lot of these kids who get used to that daily grind and all the tutors and all the things that I'm talking to you about, and then all of a sudden are cold turkey out of that and don't know what to do next, need help as well. And that's also
they
a
lose all
part.
that structure,
That's
know?
right. That's right.
I was reading about Carla Williams, who's the athletic director at University of Virginia, and how more complex her job is now 5 years later after she got it, because now she had to hire a GM, which we never had GMs before in college. Right. She had to hire a capologist, just like the NFL has. She has a capologist now. She has a slew of accountants that work with players on their tax problems, like from all their NIL deals. So she literally has accountants on staff to help work with the players. She has all these people now, and of course you have a scouting department and you have the 14-person coaching department. So it's a very complex situation now in these athletic departments.
Indeed it is, and payroll is up because you move a lot of things internal like these collectives, and then all of a sudden there's a new set of a lot of different things that we now are responsible for, and we've got to have heinies in the chair, as they say, to take on all the responsibility. But hey, we're moving fast and furious, so the ones who are getting ready for it will be okay with good vision, but the ones who aren't, they're gonna have some problems. So.
Well, when you take over as general manager of the NC State athletic department one day, keep Rob me in mind. We're interested.
Well, unfortunately,
remember the little guys.
Yeah, they're not calling. But I will say I appreciate the Carolina blue background there Rob's got for me today. But I do have a lot of friends over at North Carolina, and we're all anxious to see what Chapel Bill's going to do over there throughout the rest of this year. So keeping a close eye on that. But
should not have gone for 2.
I agree with that. I'm glad they did. I'm
glad they did.
Let's go look at this material, guys. We got some good stuff. Here we go. All right, let's do a shout out to our sponsor for this evening, and that is DraftKings. DraftKings has been a longtime sponsor of ours. We really enjoyed using the app, placing small bets. It's a lot of fun. It adds a lot of juice to each game that you bet on. Right now, they've got a 100% match up to $100 if you do a new deposit. And they also give you 50 bonus bet dollars if you win your first bet, which is really a pretty good deal. So, Robbie, what do you think of DraftKings? How much have you enjoyed using it?
Oh, it's the best. I've been having so much fun with it. The other day I was thinking there is no better time than this right now to be enjoying all the different games and looking at the spreads and checking out, who's hurt and who's questionable. And then I thought about it. There are so many times of the year when that's true. March Madness is like that. And so DraftKings is fun all year round. It's incredible. You can do parlays. You can just, put some money down on a certain game, overs, scores. If you you cater it to what you like. And I think they always have really good deals. I was attracted to that in the beginning. And then it's a really cool app. So DraftKings is awesome.
You know, one feature I really like that they have that a lot of the other sites don't have, and that is the cash out option. So like this weekend, I did a bunch of parlays. I had a couple hit, I had a couple not hit, and then I had one that was a four team parlay, and I hit the first three. The other one was tonight, and it was an over that I don't think is going to hit. And so this morning, I actually cashed out for triple my investment, which is a really cool function. I won't have to let that game run tonight and see if I hit it. If I didn't hit it, I'd lose the whole thing. So really cool feature there. I like the cash out option.
It is. I'm really glad they're a sponsor. It's a cool app.
Yep. So guys, check it out tonight. Like I said, they have the bonuses that you're available for if you want to go ahead and make your first deposit. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. See you soon.
All right. So tonight we're calling the NIL Monetizing College Athletics episode with Cam Wyrick. This is our episode 80. You can see some of the really big players in this whole space. We didn't mention Cam, you know, Department of Labor has issues in this area. We got Title IX you got to worry about. You have NCAA. You have the College Football Playoff, which is its own organization now. You have, of course, March Madness to deal with when it comes to basketball. And then you have a lot of different players organizations that have been spinning up that are also representing their people. So any thoughts about all these different influences in the space, and how do you keep up with it all?
Yeah, there's way too many, and it's next to impossible. I had a mentor early on in the business, and his skin would crawl every time somebody used the word Wild Wild West. And I couldn't understand why his skin would crawl. And he finally explained it to me one day, and it had exactly to do with the Wild Wild West that's on your screen right now. But Wild Wild West has nothing to do with the kids themselves, and that's why his skin was crawling. In other words, none of this is the kids' fault.
Right.
Okay.
So it's
All
true.
right. The kids haven't done anything wrong. And we can go back to Ed O'Bannon looking at that video game that day and saying, wait a minute now, that guy's image looks kind of like mine. Who are they to use my image? And fast forward, here come the lawsuits all of a sudden. And now we
Yep.
better roll out the snowball, even though the guardrails are not firm, because all these lawsuits are coming in and we got to do something quick. Well, the guardrails were far from firm. And in fact, they got wider and wider apart. And all of a sudden you end up with all these entities involved, and the guardrails have never been farther apart in my guesstimation than they are today.
Do you deal with CAPA at all, the College Association of Players?
I do not. No,
Okay.
I'm of course knee deep. We'll talk about the College Sports Commission if you would like, as we kind of jump into
Yeah.
what's going on with the House settlement.
Yep.
But probably nobody better than you can talk about Department of Labor, Tom, here and what all's going on there. But a real can of worms. And I'll give an easy example here of what an athlete being an employee of a university is. But if an athlete's an employee at a university, then he or she might need some health insurance, right? Because there are a millionfold different directions that your entire screen goes, and cohesiveness, in my opinion, doesn't exist. And we're a long way from where we need to be. And I believe that the lawsuits will continue to be multifold, and I believe things are going to change on the daily for years to come.
So you're saying every day you wake up, there's some kind of new rule or some kind of tweak that you need to know about. It sounds like
it wouldn't be a far exaggeration,
Yeah.
particularly when I'm getting into laws by state, Tom, and then high school versus college. Something new every day. It's
because
just
Rob and I joke about how, it feels like the rules change about every 3 months or every 6 months, but we're not in it every single day like you are. Sounds like
Yeah,
it's
Cam,
even more frequent than that.
So I'm looking at this whole process from outside, and a lot like just a normal person that's not really following it on a daily basis. Would you say that this has been a process that, obviously it's a process that is following some logic, the way it's funneling towards a set of rules and funneling towards, a large amount of organizations that are going to combine? Or do you is what you're watching logical, or is it erratic and knee jerk? Like, what's your description of what we're looking at?
I think that we're better off to an extent from where we were 2 years ago when the snowball started going 100 miles an hour. I believe the snowball has slowed down a little bit via House settlement.
That's good.
with a long ways to go. But guys, you know, whether you're for or against government, at the end of the day, something this complex needs an umbrellaed entity that makes the rules, polices, and takes care. And that's just not what's happening. There are people, and I won't say this myself, other than there are people who will tell you that the NCAA themselves are in a lot of trouble. That there will be a mega power conference and they will cut the NCAA out and they will develop a governing body and they will have a $500 million worth of TV contracts per year. And my you know, I guess my response to that is, well, that sounds great, but who's the president? You know, who's
Yeah.
gonna govern? Who's the king?
Right. That's a really good point. You know, I think already NCAA has already lost control. They feel very feckless. They feel like they can't really enforce anything anymore. You know, they bring these really kind of light, you know, tap on the wrist type penalties when people have recruiting violations.
Yeah.
It already feels like they've kind of lost control of the sport.
Yeah,
And
somebody
really all
else's words to me were hanging on by a thread. Those aren't
yeah,
my words, but I do
100%.
believe that some sort of governance, you know, no matter how you feel, somebody's got to call the shots, not somebody's. You know what happens when you got, you know, when you got too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
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 And you know, guys, that's where we are now. It's a
And
lot of cooks.
maybe you'll have a college football league spin up. You'll have a college basketball league spin up, that kind of thing that
Right.
will, like you said, just cut NCAA out of the process.
It
It's
will.
probably
And then,
pretty,
guys, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean for the smaller, you know, the smaller universities who are still playing high level football?
mhm.
You know, an example that comes to mind might be, you know, my friends over at East Carolina, or you know, our
Mhm.
friend
Yeah.
Jackson is at App State. Well, what happens to those? And the answer to that may very well be that farm league type university who still plays high quality caliber football and develops young men and develops young women at all sports. But they're not a part of the power and the Power Five and the new governance, and so those kids have to hit the portal to get to Ohio State.
Yeah, maybe NCAA becomes your Division two, and
Mm.
it's the funnel to the big league that you're talking about, the big massive league.
I've heard that
Yeah,
instance. Hurry up and wait though.
yeah. Well, let's talk about your company's vision before we go any further, Cam. Just a little bit about the vision, where you see it going. You said you're in your infancy, but tell us a little bit about where you see it going.
Yeah, you know, 2 years and just getting to know the kids and then listening to them and listening what they do and what they do know and what they don't know. The younger they are, the less they know. And so, you know, the vision is to make sure that they're in a position where they do know. I'm seeing a lot of colleges now, thank goodness, put classes in their curriculum where the kid can either take the class and get class credit for it, and or some students are having to take NIL classes on campus. They're not getting credit, but because they're an athlete, they have to go get the education.
Hmm.
So either way, you know, I'm happy to see it going on. I do believe the kids need to be quote unquote forced into the education if they're going to dip their toe in this realm at all, whether they're getting
Hmm.
class credit or not. Because I just believe that it's viably important that somebody's looking out for them, other than just the entire athletic department.
What I absolutely love about your company name, BrandBoss, is that it fits your vision so well. Your vision is essentially everyone is their own personal brand. And as you can see, you reach all the way down into middle school. So you got these kids coming out that are incredible athletes, and their brand starts right there. And you guys are going to be that partner for them all the way through in developing their brand.
Well, there it is. That's the vision.
That's a really cool way.
I don't tell you what your brand is. I do have, you know, questions that I can ask you if you're not sure, and we
Mhm.
may can help you hone in because not everybody knows. You know, just like everybody coming out of high school doesn't know what they want to major in when they get to
Mhm.
college because they're 18 years old. But if you don't know what your brand is and aren't ready to boss it, then we'll help you get there, and we'll help you determine kind of what that looks like. And it all starts with what you're most passionate about. You know,
Well,
I
Cam, we
always say
need.
this, guys, I always say this, if you only drink water, you don't like energy drinks, I am not going to let you have an energy drink deal just so you can make money. Okay. That's
Mhm.
not fair to the kid. And that's not fair to the brand either. Okay. What I try to do as part of this vision is I'm a filter between the kid and the brand, and I want it to be a beautiful marriage. But if you only drink water, I may have to tell Red Bull, this is not for you, and we're going to have to let that $1,000 go. But guess what? We'll go talk to a water company for you because you're passionate about water.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
let's don't fluff it. Let's represent ourselves well as young men and young women, but let's represent these brands who are willing to invest in you too. And let's make sure you like their products, because if you don't, we're not going to use it. I spend a lot of time getting free product to these kids so that they can try them out. And if they call me back and say, Mr. Cam, this ankle brace, is squeezing my foot purple, then we're going to pass on the deal.
Right. No, that
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah.
Well, I just absolutely love that
Great.
your vision is for the kids. It's just so good. Warms my heart. I will say, Robbie and I want to have an offline conversation with you, Cam, because we want to talk to you about the Sports Guyz brand.
There you
We're
go.
not, we're
There
not
you go.
athletes, but you know where we want to go with the Sports Guyz. So we'll talk
we
about
can
it offline.
we can do that.
Yep. So looking at the NCAA settlement, you mentioned it a couple times already. This happened May of 2024. And like you said, that snowball was rolling downhill until this finally happened. And essentially the House stepped in and there was a $2.8 billion settlement, which ended up being $30 million a year for 10 years for the power schools. So you're talking about a pretty substantial amount of money. And that was going to pay back athletes that had already graduated and moved on for what they should have been able to get, which was NIL compensation for their name, image, and likenesses. It also started us at a $21 million salary cap for each D1 school. So it gave us a little bit of rules around how much you can actually spend on sports programs. What were your thoughts when this first came down? And like you said, maybe it stopped the ball rolling quite as fast.
I think my first thought as a novice might be what your listeners may be thinking, and that is, okay, and by the way, you rounded up and that's okay, but the number's $20.5 million is what
Yeah.
the House settlement says. And my thought
Mhm.
was, okay, cool. Where does that money come from? I don't think many people are aware that this back pay in the 2.8 billion
Mhm.
and then the $20.5 million that then is to be generated moving forward for your current set of athletes. The 2.8 billion is coming from the NCAA, right? Because they have a hand in this. So they've got dollars invested as part of what the NCAA has garnered all these years on bowl game contracts, media rights, TV revenue, and then the conferences themselves as far as this back pay goes. So 2.8 billion runs through the NCAA and then conferences. The 20.5 million, a lot of people get very confused about, because a lot of people think, okay, I'm allowed to pay athletes now, pay for play, because they really don't have to work for this money. They just have to play. You understand that? This
Yeah.
is this is a settlement that says you don't have to show up at the Boys and Girls Club to read books for me to get this money. This is a
100%.
rev share. Okay.
Yep.
So that 20.5 million comes from the university itself and its own ticket sales, sponsorships, and media rights. So these are that 20.5 is not donor dollars per se, guys. That is from the university invested back into the kids. Now, here is the problem. The problem back to a governing body is that nowhere in the House settlement does it stipulate how much of the $20.5 million has to go where.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
That to me, it's a problem. To me,
Yeah.
it's well, we're leaving it up to the university. Well, I want to spend the entire amount on football. Well, I don't think anybody's going to get away with that, but I do know this as of recently, the most recent stats I've got say that 85% of the 20.5 million is going to men's basketball and football. There's only 15% left over for women's basketball and all the rest. And one,
Lacrosse.
yeah, yeah, and one who's got a daughter playing volleyball at Virginia, you may, and who's a high level volleyball player, you may be upset about that. And I
Right.
would say to you, you probably have a right to be.
And your
Okay.
daughters are volleyball players, right? So they're right in that.
Indeed they are. Yeah, they're club volleyball players, so they're but they certainly can be in the NIL realm. That this money, once again, okay, we're reinvesting back and we're forcing these schools to reinvest back if they opt in, but not telling them at least some sort of continuum about where percentages of these dollars might go. That's a tough one.
I found it interesting that this settlement got rid of two of the biggest lawsuits, but there's three still active. And one of the ones that's still active is all around women and Title IX. And what they're basically saying is that 85-15, that is not fair. They're not asking for 50-50, but they're saying that we need a lot more than that to be able to run our women's soccer team, women's lacrosse team, field hockey, on and on and on. And so I see a real rub there. I think this was an initial kind of starting place,
Right.
but I can imagine this is going to get even messier going forward with these other lawsuits.
No doubt. We talked about the nonstop, and that's the lawsuit snowball is a long way from over with. At least some guardrails around some of what we're going to pay and how we're going to do it. Some of that's out of the way.
If I sent my girl to go play lacrosse at Princeton, and all of a sudden they're forcing Princeton to get rid of lacrosse for some reason, or forcing Virginia to get rid of lacrosse because of this settlement, and I'm a parent of that daughter, I'm going to be really angry, and I'm going to join this lawsuit.
You're going to join it, and you may be looking right away to maybe transfer her out to somewhere where she could garner a little bit more. So could I make one more comment, guys?
Yep.
That's very, very important along those lines. I won't say that I've done everything right, but I will say one of the things that I think that I was on to early on, and I've been right about so far, if I may, is I am technically a third-party agent at BrandBoss. Okay. So at the original outset of collectives, which sat outside of the universities, and if your listeners don't know it, a collective was something established by a bunch of donors and maybe one person who, was on a salary who sat inside, but it was big donors and people out raising money and bringing money into a collective to then to pay athletes for performing services, right? Not pay for play, but for performing services. Those collectives are now moving inside of the universities. Well, as a third-party agent, if your budget is $20.5 million from a revenue share perspective, and your quarterback, once again at Virginia, needs $1 million, okay? As a third-party agent, if I represent your quarterback as an NIL agent and I can go get him $500,000, now Virginia only needs to come up with $500,000 instead of $1 million. Are you with me? So I was not third-party agents and people trying to help these kids were frowned upon when collectives sat outside of the university because of the lack of guardrails and because the collective really wanted control of the kids. They didn't want outside parties influencing their kids. They wanted to pay them. They wanted to be in control of them. I've gone from being an outside entity to now a friend to these collectives, surely because what I go and do for the kid, your girl, the Princeton's a great analogy. Maybe Princeton is not sharing enough in the rev share with her, but if she has a good agent like BrandBoss, perhaps I can make her some money. And by the way, it won't count against the house settlement.
So you're filling other holes. There's the collective hole, there's what you're providing, and then there's what the university can do and can't do under the cap. So
exactly right. I just understand that my dollars that I raise and what I do with the athlete, all of those, even though they don't count against the cap, what I'm doing on the outside is between me and them as their agent, and the school really doesn't have any control, but now I'm a friend.
When Rob saw this come down a year and a half ago, and we talked about it for the first time with Jackson and Brad, remember, Rob, what you said was this feels like a first step of about 10 steps, and that this is going to take a long time to settle out.
It does feel like we're in a process that has some logic to it, even though there are weird twists and turns. I still think we're working our way towards a structure, and possibly, if the NCAA goes away, it gets replaced by the next NCAA thing. So I'm not sure that the Wild West is such a perfect analogy. It's more like just a process, a messy process that is going to end up being one that makes more sense.
I think it was Wild West. It was Wild West before this settlement. I think now it's just like partially Wild West, because it still feels like you're saying, Cam, it still feels a little bit chaotic,
right?
But it's less chaotic than it was.
Please understand that the dollars I go and raise, Rob and Tom, as a third-party agent, though they don't count against the cap, I'm not allowed to be in the pay for play business. That's only for the revenue share. In other words, I go get deals, but the student athlete has to do quote unquote work for those deals.
Gotcha.
Okay.
They have to sign autographs. They have to go to Denny's and
That's right.
see people, make appearances and stuff like
You
that.
you got it. You
So
got it.
two questions for you, Cam, about this. So first one was 80% of the costs were covered by the 4 big conferences. So don't they have a right now to get the bigger TV deals, to get some of those things to cover some of their losses out of this?
If I
I'm
was
just
on,
thinking if I'm a school administrator, that's how I'm thinking. And then secondly, why did they cut it off at 2016? Was it, statute of limitations? What was the reason why they stopped at 2016?
so I'll answer that one first. The best explanation I've ever heard is that it had to stop somewhere. So
Mhm.
I haven't gotten anything any better than that. And if I'm 2015, I'm probably a little bit upset. But
Mhm.
if it would have been 15, then the 14s would have been upset.
Yeah.
So, they're holding schools accountable, back almost 10 years, but
Mhm.
I know of no other reason than it needed to stop somewhere.
Mm,
It
that's right.
sounds to me like there was some kind of just straight up compromise.
Yep.
It was
That's
a
how,
room full of people and everyone had different opinions and they could just coer, coalesce around 10 years being a logical 1 decade marker.
yeah, no
Mhm.
doubt. No doubt.
So now we've entered the world of pay to play. That's the latest development. We have this temporary salary cap. Like you said, Kim, the school has the freedom to decide how much money is divvied up among each of the sports programs. The worry is that you're going to go from 35 programs down to like 10 programs because you're going to get the rowing team cut and the other teams that don't make any money cut. So that's the real concern, is that you'll see
Unless
shrinkage.
you get BrandBoss and then they can
Yeah,
make up the difference
yeah, that's right.
as they
That's
grow
right.
and get bigger and more powerful, more
Everybody hire Kim.
connected.
Everybody.
Thank you, guys.
But what's your thought about this? Scholarship limits are under consideration now. How are these schools going to come out of this on the other side with their 35 programs intact?
You know, there better be some doggone good fundraisers out there. That's and so whether it's through a collective, I believe in free enterprise and I believe in creativity. Okay, and I want to give you a couple of examples, but I believe he or she who gets the most creative is really going to come out on a side of this thing that they really like. And
Right.
let me just give you an example. The first example I would give you would be, and I'll use a name. Jimbo Fisher was relieved of his duties at Texas A&M on a gazillion-dollar buyout. I forgot what the actual figure is, but
Yeah,
they're
74
it
paying.
was
million.
huge.
Yeah,
It was
they're
a
74.
paying
huge
him
buyout.
until 2031, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
All right. So as an idea, go sign Jimbo Fisher as your new football coach, and sign him to a 5-year deal. Okay,
Mhm.
with the
$1 million a year.
understanding that Jimbo's not going to take a salary until, let's say, year 3, maybe even year 4. Depends on what Jimbo wants to do. Jimbo's got a lot of money. Okay, so Jimbo's still getting paid from Texas A&M. He has a 5-year deal from you, but you're not paying him for the first 3 years. Now turn around and take that money that you would have paid Jimbo anyway at the new university he's going to and roll that back into NIL. There's millions and millions of dollars right there by just being creative. Now, I know there's
Mhm.
legality involved and there's a lot going on, but as I
Mhm.
understand his contract, nothing that he makes now affects his buyout from them. And some
Mhm.
contracts are written that way. So there's a
And
creative
you know what you
idea.
could do, Cam? I like that. You know what you could do, Cam, is you could have like a no fire clause or something. You just
Yep.
make it like his last stop in his career or
Yep.
something.
This is it. Yep.
Yeah.
And money's not a problem for Jimbo, but I'm just saying, get creative. Something that my other idea is not mine. It's already happening. It's happening at West Virginia University. West Virginia, if you haven't seen, has set up Country Roads Restaurant, and it's
Mhm.
it's it's tied to the university. It is a sports bar that evidently puts on a great show when all WVU athletics are on and all other times, NFL Sunday and otherwise. And
Mhm.
proceeds from this restaurant automatically go to NIL. So if you're not going to a game in Morgantown,
Wow.
where are you
That's
going to go
cool.
watch it? But to me, that's on a smaller scale than the millions of dollars we're talking about in the Jimbo example. But
Right. Right.
cranking out pot stickers and a bunch of beer and a good percentage of those profits rolled back into NIL, that's creative.
That is
Yeah.
creative. I like that.
Yeah.
I
So
like
And
that.
people support that kind of creative, support for it comes
So
back to what you want, like to your university.
so
they're
what I
going to eat.
can
They're going to eat anyway, Rob. So why not go
Yeah.
eat somewhere good and that gives back? You're right.
I like
They
I like
gladly
both
go
of
to that place.
Yeah.
I like both of your creative solutions. And then the third one being, of course, like you said, having really good boosters and fundraisers. If you're Ohio State, you're going to be fine. You're still going to have the 35 programs. If you're Michigan, you're going to be fine. If you're Stanford, these major programs, Alabama, whatever, they're going to be fine.
But hold on, Tom.
I'm more worried about.
If you're Florida State, you're thinking you're always going to be fine. And then one day you wake up and you're not. If you're Clemson, you think you're going to be, in the national championship conversation every year. And one day you're not. Donor fatigue, if you're Alabama, you're struggling because there's a little bit less resources and you're used to being the top dog, but you're going up against Texas A&M that has a bigger wallet, So I don't think that anymore that you'll always be at the top. You got to fight your way up there.
We had a University of Virginia, very wealthy donor, give $80 million to help us build the indoor football facility. And it is really slick. I mean, it's really nice. So if you have that kind of situation, you have a big advantage over, mid to small size school. JMU is probably not going to have that situation. So
no doubt, Tom. And then it's a matter, I don't know how much money that guy's got, but now can you go back to the well there again from an NIL perspective, or is he exhausted?
Yeah, he's look, I just wrote an $80 million check. What are you talking about?
I've been curious about Indiana. What do they have going on as far as, are they tapping into a whole bunch of new donors?
Yeah. So winning brings them out of the woodworks, Rob. Okay.
Yeah.
Particularly in a school that has been dominating the basketball landscape. So I can't use any names, but I will tell you that I have spoken to a extremely prominent basketball coach, college basketball coach, who is one of the most well-known, who is still around. And at the end of the day, he's at a large university. And that university happens to be extremely committed to football, and they're making some pretty big new commitments to basketball, but they're not quite where they need to be yet. And said coach is somewhat frustrated because said coach has to go up against.
You said it was the football coach or the basketball coach?
No, I'm in touch with the basketball coach.
Basketball coach.
Okay. He's very frustrated because his job is to keep up with the Dukes of the world, those are words out of his mouth. Duke is a school who's playing better football, but Duke is one of the schools who is making a significant basketball NIL contribution to that program. Right. So here he sits at a very large school, but they also have a football program that's worth a hoot. And he now has nowhere near the budget that Duke basketball has because Duke is not making the same investment in football. They're giving more to basketball. Are you with me?
Because they're a basketball school.
So there's your Indiana right now, Rob. But I will tell you, Indiana, has always had a prominent basketball footprint. But if this guy keeps this up in football,
they're gonna have a big football footprint.
They're gonna have to shift some funds,
They're gonna have to shift some funds. So I didn't answer you there completely, but it is going on. And once again, the schools have to decide where they distribute unless the governing body tells them how they have to.
So the NCAA settlement at the very end, a lot of people missed it, but one of the final clauses was that the schools and the conferences can decide what the salary cap's going to be every 2 years. So every 2 years can be reviewed. And so where do you think it's going? Are we going to have a $50 million, $100 million salary cap at Texas?
Yeah,
I think where is this going?
I think you take inflation and you 10x it, because everything goes up, right? But I think that depending on whether a power conference gets established and what kind of overhead there is associated with that, I've heard anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion per year of TV revenue. So I just see that 20.5 million, in 10 years is at least double. I just don't see how it can't be.
And those big schools we talked about are going to be the ones that are going to max out football. University of Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Texas A&M. These are the schools that are going to max it out, I think.
They're going to max it out, brother.
For sure. I agree with you. The one other consideration here before we move on is schools have been very reticent when they pay players to make them employees, instead wanting to make them essentially contractors. And there's a real reason for that, because then you bring in Department of Labor, then you bring in unemployment insurance, then they have to cover benefits. Then they have to cover.
Can you fire a player? And then if you fire a player, is he still a student?
Yeah.
Right.
So there's
Yeah.
a lot of complication if these kids become employees versus contractors, and that there's
And
a big rub there.
antitrust laws, I don't see that in the near future. I don't see it coming off the table until it's fully vetted and exhausted.
But I think
So
that's going to be litigated, is what I'm saying. There's
And
be
they're
For
going to have to
sure.
pay taxes on the tuition
Mhm.
as part of
Yeah.
their salary.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And by the way, you know how the NFL works, right? When I'm a Carolina Panther and I go play the Los Angeles Rams, I pay
Mhm.
Los Angeles tax for
Yes.
having
Yeah,
worked
that's
a
right.
day
That's right.
out there. So, guys, there's a million of those examples that, we could give your listeners, but extremely, extremely complicated when we get into them being employees.
So when
And
you
I
file,
just,
you have to file 17 different states, that kind of thing. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
Yeah.
So let's look at the NIL framework right now. We got direct institutional payments. So D1 schools can now pay their athletes. You've got bigger financial packages coming every single year. You've got that, like you talked about, Cam, really well, which is the payment structure combined with NIL, combined with BrandBoss, all these different ways that athletes are being compensated, their own private deals. In some cases, they were saying some of the bigger quarterbacks in college right now are getting 4 or 5 different revenue streams, which is
Correct.
just incredible to me. So you got that to deal with now. You got new recruiting leverage. Schools can now use NIL payments as direct incentive to come to their school, whereas they couldn't before. So that's a new thing. Have you seen that as something you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I tell you, we may not have time today, but at least for the next episode, we can have an entire session on transfer portal if you
Mhm.
guys want to.
I do want
And
to.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
a word about, how football has moved, from basically 2 transfer portals a year to 1, but what does tampering mean now? When am
Mhm.
I allowed and what am I allowed to talk about? And by the way, the transfer portal, guys, is not open very long. I don't know if you guys are
Mhm.
aware, like for
Mhm.
instance,
Yeah.
2026,
2 weeks.
the transfer portal is January 2nd to January 16th this coming year. And by
Right.
the way, we went from, 2, 1 in the spring, 1 in the fall. We went to 1 in January now. And
Yeah.
so, you know, do you not think that it's possible that some coaches might considering contacting kids prior to seeing their name enter a
Yeah.
portal when a deal is this big?
I'm
Come
100%.
sure
on.
they're
As a
having
matter of
high
fact,
school friends communicate off the record and all that stuff. Yeah. They're
as a
Yeah.
they're
matter of
definitely
fact,
back channeling.
Yeah.
they said one of the reasons that James Franklin was fired and Brian Kelly were fired mid-season, whereas that didn't used to happen, is apparently the roster building process for all the big schools these days starts the first week of December. And
Yes.
they said that it would be a huge handicap for these programs if they didn't know if they were having the coach stay for next year or not.
Hmm.
They needed to have somebody new named, and they needed a new regime come in so that they could start working on building the roster in the first week of December.
You just hit
It's
on it.
really amazing.
And by
And
the
the
way,
other,
this College Sports Commission, Tom, Rob, I don't know if you saw this or not, but they came up with their own self-initiated, it literally is called the College Snitch Line. Okay, did you know
Really?
about the College Snitch Line? Yeah, you need look up College Snitch Line. It's part of this body that is reviewing the NIL Go deals that each athlete has to submit every time that they're signing one that is non-house settlement related. But we now have a College Snitch Line where if you feel like one of your players was tampered with, as one example of many, but you feel like something wasn't right, you can call it anonymously and it will be investigated.
that's
You know
amazing.
what's interesting,
Wow.
real quick, is Jackson. We interviewed him twice, and his first one was about a year and a half ago, and the conversation really centered around wanting more playing time, and most of the people he knew wanted more playing time, and that was the justification for the majority of the transfers, and that there were some that were going for money, but most of them wanted playing time in a different situation. And the second interview really centered more around the business side of it, and you
Mm.
know looking more at trying to get a better NIL deal. And so it was just interesting in that short period of time with the same kicker. Um, his
And
experience was different um, over that year.
Hmm.
More and more of the people he was coming in contact with were transferring more for the business
well, he
side
had
of it.
talked
So,
to so many more athletes by then. And what happens is they're
yeah,
starting to realize that 99% of college athletes never make it to the pros. And so this is their one chance to get a lick, so to speak.
Right.
And, that's part of it. What's interesting too, I wanted to tell you, Cam, I noticed today also that these big schools have big insurance policies against coach firings.
Right.
And they were saying, like, for instance, LSU, and all of them have insurance policies. They said LSU has to pay Brian Kelly $54 million in his package.
Yeah.
And they're only going to pay 20 million of that. So the insurance policy pays 34 million of it. So it
Right.
really takes a lot of the bite out of some of these big packages if insurance is paying 60% of it.
It does, until now. With their new coach, their insurance policy premium went up so much because of
Exactly.
that they got dropped, or they don't have another insurance company willing to take them. You know, we call
Right.
that stop loss in my old business. It is,
Right.
I'm on the hook to here, but then they're on the hook. But let me tell you, Tom, you put that new roof on your house,
I know.
and that insurance company is not going to be looking to renew you cheap, if
But I
at
did
all.
think that was interesting. Although you're right, if I were an insurance company, I would not get into the college football business because it's
No
pretty
way.
brutal.
No way. Those premiums would have to really make sense to do that.
No
Yeah,
free lunch.
that's right.
Another one here is a closer model to professional pay. Like you said, you have direct payment from schools. You're going to have this situation you talked about where you're going to have, if you play a away game in Los Angeles, you're going to have to start thinking about California taxes. So you got all that coming now. So you're going to have accountants on your staff. You've got the NI collective boom you've talked about, boosters, alumni, these donor pools, everyone competing for the same pool of money, pulling on each other. Like you said, there's some people that were used to getting a certain amount of money from their Alabama boosters are not getting maybe half of it anymore.
Right.
And so you said that there's just real competition, and there's that donor exhaustion, I think you called it. So that's a big part of the environment here. And then finally, transfer portal flexibility. It used to be you can only transfer once. Then it was you could transfer twice. Now it seems like you can transfer every 6 months. So, any other thoughts about this framework and how you're dealing with it?
It is, and let's, if I may, we ought to really have another session on transfer portal
We will.
alone, if not collectives and transfer portal. But
And actually, guys, drop us a comment if you want Cam to come back for part 2. We do. So
on the collective boom, okay, so the collective, now understanding what we've learned tonight, the house settlement has nothing to do necessarily with the collectives, even though the collectives are in-house now. They are still donor dollars, and they are not pay for play dollars. The athlete actually has to do something to garner money from the collective. Each deal for these athletes now has to be run through the College Sports Commission, the CSC, if you've read about this. And I believe what it says today is that if that deal is going to garner $600 or more, it needs to be run through. Well, here's what's happened. Because these deals have to be run through, and by the way, this is being administered, as I'm told, by 4 full-time employees, and for overflow, the firm of Deloitte has been hired, who I don't know to be in the sports business, but I know they're a bunch of smart people garnering data and looking at deals. We had about 8,300 deals submitted through already, and over 6,000 of those have been approved. So they have a very low rejection rate of the NIL collective deals that are coming in, but they still have to be approved. Here is the problem, and it is a big one. And that is that they don't have the capacity to turn these deals near as fast as they are. And last I checked, guys, we play football, for instance, every Saturday. So if I have a deal come in on Monday, and I need that deal approved by Friday so that I can show up on the sideline, maybe drinking a certain kind of sports water or wearing a certain wristband, and my deal is not approved, I now miss out on my deal with some of these corporations because my deal was not approved through the CSC, and it is becoming a real problem. And there is a ton of backlog, as I understand it.
Good Lord.
So you're making me report this into an entity that's not getting my decision turned quick enough for me, and it's costing the kids, which you will see in the news shortly if you haven't already. Some of the schools are starting to say, how does the old adage go? Like, I'm going to do it now and ask for forgiveness later.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will.
So question, is that a function of lack of manpower, female power, or is it a system problem? Like there's too many hoops to jump through. Even if you had 10 times the number of people, it would still be slow. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought is that anything that starts new is a collection of data, and there were no data points here to compare commiserate deals one to another. So one
Gotcha.
of the things that drives me nuts about it, if I may, is the I call it the VBP. It's the valid business purpose portion of this, and is the deal and the rates and terms commiserate with, compensation paid similarly in a situation for a person who is not an athlete. Okay, scratch your head on that a minute. So part of my NIL collective submission, and whether you approve me making the money or not, involves you comparing me to a person who does some sort of similar work with some sort of similar compensation package who is not an athlete. How do those two relate?
They don't.
They don't. So over time, Rob, I believe that, Deloitte's a smart firm. I believe they'll gather and then garner enough data where they can start making some better decisions. But you start anything out from scratch with no data, and here's where you end up. You end up taking too much time to make decisions.
Well, that's the problem, is this process and this whole system is so new. We're all trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure it out too. And they're trying to run it on a daily basis. And we have so many schools, so many athletes, they just can't keep up with it.
And they're holding the athlete up.
I understand that.
It sounds like it's part manpower, part system problem.
Yeah. Like you talk about, think of the lawsuits coming now, Rob. If I missed out on a pretty substantial opportunity because you couldn't turn it to me. And I saw today the average deal running through there's $5,816, but the top end of that is a $1.6 million deal that's been run through. So
like a Nike deal or something.
Yeah. Caitlin Clark's Nike deal. What was it? 16 million? I don't even remember. It was the multi-gazillions of dollars, but yeah.
Actually, Travis Hunter last year had Gatorade, and I think it was 3.5 million or something.
There you go, Arch Manning.
Yeah.
So
pretty
anyway,
amazing.
that's a whole nother podcast, guys, that and transfer portal. Okay.
It really is. It really is. So name, image, likeness. Just wanted to touch on this topic real quickly at a deeper level, Cam, and tell us what is a name, image, likeness deal and what is not one, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Great. So here's what an athlete would say to you is not right about the whole system. And that is, Tom, if you were a Hollywood actor and you went out on the streets and you wanted to partner up with Gatorade or with Nike or with anybody else you want to, you can do so with no sports commission to enter that deal into to have it approved, with no guardrails about, how much it can be and whether you can wear a company's colors, and what you can do. But because you're an athlete, you have all these guardrails and all these things you have to miss. So that's where the kids are coming from in all of this is, wait a minute. In a lot of cases, I'm not even wearing my school gear when I'm doing these deals. This is about my own personal name and image and likeness. But yet I've got all these guardrails because I'm an athlete, and a Hollywood actor and or an Olympic athlete even don't have these guardrails. They can go make however much they want and answer to nobody. So NIL is not perfect. All right. And that's going to be no shock to anybody. But we all agree that with no guardrails, we ended up with the snowball. And so we need to have some guardrails. But the kids still remain upset because they have to answer to any of this. And I heard somebody say, well, if it weren't for the college, you wouldn't be famous and you wouldn't be playing. And I think most of these kids will tell you, if I wanted to be, I sure would, with or without that particular college.
Yeah.
So we're not perfect, but an NIL deal is about using the rules that we do have to follow, reporting what we should report, and then using our name, image, likeness on, in most cases, social media. And by the way, let your listeners know, TikTok rules the world, and there is no close second place. If there had to be a close second place, Instagram is somewhat popular, but TikTok rules the world as pertains to ROI that an athlete's going to bring back to a corporation if they're going to use social media to do it. Okay.
Interesting. Wow.
So there's that. And then, from an NIL perspective, if I back things down into the high school realm where, I'm also passionate, high school deals are never going to be, and I say never, we got the one trading card instance, but they're not going to be Gatorade and Nike. The high school deal is going to be Tom Pope's local bar and grill. And I'm a stud wide receiver or basketball player. And, I'm going to tweet myself eating chicken fingers, at Rob's Bar and Grill and telling everybody how delicious they are, Rob Pope's car dealership. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then lastly, so this is my data, but this is what, I'm seeing what I'm doing in the college realm and in the high school realm. 10,000 followers on TikTok, and it helps if you got them on Instagram too, but 10,000 followers is garnering anywhere from $150 to $300 per post right now for these athletes.
And you're talking
Okay.
like a 10-second post, right?
I'm talking about a 10-second post.
Wow.
20 seconds, whatever it is that the deal is that we've worked out, because these companies, I sit down with them because we got to have a strategy for what it is they want to garner out of the partnership.
Right.
So go ahead and double that to 20,000 followers. You can about double the money, and then things start to kind of level off at $50,000, kind of in the $400 range. But once again, how much time goes into it? Not a lot, but the most successful athletes, for all your listeners out there, the most successful athletes are the ones who are posting with a lot of, like they're constantly out there. You can't take a day off if you want to gain a big following. You have to constantly be out there in people's faces on social media. So let me
That's
hush,
amazing.
but yeah.
That's great advice. That's
it
excellent
really is.
analysis.
That gives me a really good sense for NIL and what it is not. So thanks so much for that.
Basically, build a following.
In terms of compliance, you mentioned this. Is it still $600 in value or greater?
It is. As of today, it's $600 or greater must be reported, and it must be reported within 5 days of when the deal, is going to kind of come to fruition. There's gray language around that, but you want to get the deal into the CSC as soon as there's going to be a deal, which is where, guys, this is my plug for an agent. An athlete's got a lot on their plate. And people always say, well, an agent gets a percentage of my compensation. Well, yeah, but you know what else I do? I enter all your deals into the CSC for you. You know what else I do? I enter, beyond the school, I can help with the transfer portal. We can start looking at places for you to go in programs where they're missing a center. Their center's a senior and the guy behind him stinks. So maybe we can go to NC State. So yeah, so from that perspective, these third-party brands that you've got listed there in that second bullet, these can really be a resource for these families.
And are these standardized contracts like it says here? Is that still the case?
No. And what's going on between universities and kids are more standardized than what's going on between, BrandBoss and an athlete. I'm very, very flexible with the types of things that we do. But again, because we got 50 states out here, I got to make sure everybody stays eligible by state. Eligibility is the key, and we can't do anything that's even gray. I just don't even want to do gray.
Well, call out to Deloitte, hire some more people so we can all be in compliance.
I don't think they care what I think, but
I want to get your take on this. These are the top 10 NIL collectives that are out there. You can see that they're all kind of organized around the real big brands: Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, Oregon, Miami. Any surprises here? I mean, it just seems like if you're a big program, you're going to have a big collective, right?
So two things jumped off the page. Number one, everything's bigger in Texas, but we know, a good bit of where a lot of that money's coming from, and it's coming from a couple different entities, not a gazillion. There's a lot of money flowing in there, but there are some mega donors who skew some of this data from time to time. In fact, I'm kind of surprised. Yeah, A&M, Texas Tech.
I was surprised A&M wasn't in there because I thought they had the most money of everybody now.
Oh yeah, and Texas Tech's got a billionaire, so I was surprised they weren't on your list. I don't know how current this is, Tom. I'm not sure, but
he's an oil guy, right?
This was from early August, so it's relatively current.
Yeah, the oil guy, Rob, at Texas Tech. So that jumped out at me, and then the second thing that jumped out at me was this. Go down that list of 10. You're going to see 3 Big Ten schools, 4 SEC schools, and 3 ACC schools. Okay, that is not a surprise, right? Because of where I think we're headed. And you can say, well, a power conference has nothing to do, but it appears to me, at least from a fundraise perspective and from the people who care and where the money's coming from, it appears that at least these big 3 conferences seem to be somewhat competitive in the amount of money that their collectives are raising, which makes them pretty good partners. Right. For a mega conference down the road. So that was the other thing that grabbed me about your list.
Yeah.
Have you had any interaction with NC State's collective?
Oh, for sure. And it's changed a lot over the years, but there are firms now coming in wanting to kind of run a lot of different things for you. And so everybody's looking at the newest, greatest, and the biggest and the bestest. And so,
Mhm.
we've had some discussions, but guys, I'm here to help the kids, but I'm small compared to, what a large, I can certainly advise these collectives if any of your listeners are interested, but to be
Absolutely.
able to kind of come in and run a collective, that's not really in our repertoire right this second.
100%.
Yeah.
If they come to you and say they want you to set one up for them, would that be something you guys could do? Help them actually
Ab-
form a
uh,
collective?
it's been done. Absolutely.
Yeah,
We already
been
got
done.
already got some experience there for sure.
That's great. That's great. All right. So here's our open questions that we have. Can NCAA stabilize by getting out of the courtroom? This is coming out of 2024 into 2025. So that's one of the big questions is, can we get the sports out of the courtroom? And it doesn't seem like that's really going to be possible for at least a couple years.
I think
Buddy, I'd
that's one
like,
of the steering mechanisms for making this a process, you know?
Yeah.
I think Rob just answered it. I would love to think couple years time. It feels a lot longer to me than that because of the newness of a reason somebody else finds to sue tomorrow that is a
Right.
bit different than today.
Right. And you still have the big three that are still out there, one of them being the Title IX lawsuit. So
You got it.
it'll be a while. It's going to be
Um,
2026, 27 probably.
At
The next
least.
one is how will schools distribute the money and how can they do it in a way that they don't get sued? Because you already talked about
They can't.
85-15. Yeah.
So the NCAA wants to avoid yet another suit by telling them how they have to distribute their dollars. So I'm quite certain that that's why they kind of left that open. But boy, that's a head scratcher to me how uh, how how you could leave that up to the universities instead of at least getting within a few percentage points of what each needs to do. Now, I understand this, and that is that there are some power schools who don't have a football program. I was just at one recently in UNC Wilmington. What a beautiful
Right.
campus. What a
Yes, it
great
is.
baseball and basketball program
And
UNC
soccer.
Wilmington has,
Yeah.
soccer,
And
but they
soccer.
don't have a football team. So,
Right.
that's a school that probably might look at opting out of the house settlement, but if they opt in, it makes things difficult because they don't have so now they can automatically pour more into basketball, right? Because they don't have football. What does that do to keeping them competitive with,
Yeah.
a school who has to
Yeah.
pour into football?
My daughter and my daughter-in-law both went to UNC Wilmington, so
There
I
you
know
go.
it well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next question is, are student athletes going to be considered employees of the universities? We mentioned this earlier. There's a lot of legal complications if that happens. What do you think? Do you think it's going that direction? Right now, they're 1099 contractors, but
Yeah. I think if I'm giving an opinion on it right now, that's a long ways down the road too. And right now would be way, way, way too soon with too many things to iron out. It is not the time yet to make them employees, in my opinion.
Yeah,
mhm.
there are many roads that they could go down, and this is only one of them.
That's
Because
right.
you can see what happens with the NFL athletes who are employees of the franchise. They have just a lot of things to think about. And
They sure do.
I
Yep.
don't think students are ready for that. I agree. Are major conferences going to consolidate into a semi-pro league? I think, Cam, you started to give a little bit of a clairvoyance on this one.
So I think that football, there's definite potential, and there's even potential with March Madness. But what does that do to the other sports? And I don't see how that works with those others. So I see a day where we might have a semi-pro, type consolidation, and then we figure out how we can play conference soccer games potentially. One of the questions I get all the time is, does soccer, golf, volleyball, do they end up becoming what we know today as like club sports?
Mhm.
And I hope that there is a way to keep them, house settlement eligible and able to make money while maybe
Mhm.
cutting down on some of the travel expense. The ACC used to be the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now it's the All Coast Conference.
Yes.
But it's very
Yes.
expensive to fly the women's tennis team out to play Stanford, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
And
Oh
crazy.
yeah.
yeah, and it doesn't
Totally.
mean that they're any less important. It just means that it's expensive. So
Yeah.
I don't want to see them be club sports. I think the potential's on the table for that, but is there a way maybe to consolidate those sports, keep them, as part of the
A
house
bus
settlement?
ride.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No
and keep them
question.
a bus ride. Yeah.
I think football, basketball will become semi-pro leagues, and then everybody else will be under NCAA still. That's what I think. That's my guess. So we'll
Good
see.
guess.
Can we keep sports balance between the haves and the have-nots and create some parity to make it more exciting? And one of my real concerns has always been about how we, give, like this year, Virginia a chance to actually be good versus always having the same 5 programs win. So how do we keep that sports balance with NIL and the portal?
Yeah. Money's one way to do it, but the have-nots can't become a have until the big donor strikes an oil rig and hits. So I tell you, it'd just be nice if there was, not so much parity university to university, but man, in that life, company to company, we don't all have the same
I
checkbook.
look at Jackson's team, App State. I mean, they're such a great football program, always have been, and they've always had not nearly the advantages of all the other teams in North Carolina.
Right.
And yet they still play great football. But what could happen if they could actually, be with the haves and the have-nots?
Yeah.
What would happen with that?
Beautiful facilities. They got it all going for
Yeah.
them, don't they? Except for they
Yeah,
don't
we
have the money to, to pay the 5-star Texas quarterback who's been at JUCO for 2 years, right? Who's just off
Right.
the charts good. So
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know how we balance this a little bit better. I wish we could find a way. Should schools hire tax and financial advisors to help the athletes? And they're already doing this,
they already have.
like I said before.
Yeah.
Do you think they should continue to do that? Is that an important thing to do, almost more than any of the other advisors?
I absolutely. If you mean what you say about what a degree means to these student first athletes, then give them the tools and resources while they're a student athlete to handle this influx of NIL dollars. If you're not doing that, they're either going to make bad decisions or somebody like me is going to come in and help. Either way, you owe it to them because you claim that they're students first. So
Or they're going to end up getting sideways with the IRS and have a $200,000 tax bill, that kind of thing.
that's right.
Yeah. So absolutely think this is 100% a good path for all the schools to do.
100%.
How do we minimize impact on the lesser sports, the 15% you talk about? How do we make sure they have funding? And the question is, we get to a situation, like you said, are they going to become club sports, or are we going to have to privately fundraise so that we have a Virginia field hockey team, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've had one interesting discussion that really resonated, if I may share, guys, very quickly.
Yeah.
I had a guy give a substantial amount of money to a women's soccer program, and he was a decision maker at a corporation. And at the end of the day, we got done with a great meeting, and I was shocked at what he was willing to do. And so I just flat out asked him. I said, I got to ask you something. I said, I meet with so many people, and they're so football passionate, they're so basketball passionate, and as I understand it, you don't even have a daughter who plays soccer, but we really, really had a local soccer need, and I had made that known, but we were going to take whatever we could get. And you know what he said to me when I asked him why he chose to give the money to the women's soccer program?
Why?
He said,
What?
Cam, because nobody's ever asked.
Interesting.
Huh.
Huh. I
Okay.
like it.
And I'll never forget that. My dad was always a ask for the order guy, but sometimes people known to be sports fanatics are getting hit on all the time. There's donor exhaustion again, but they're getting hit on for the same thing for the same sports and or facilities.
Mhm.
But that really taught me something about, man, sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes you just got to ask.
That's
And
right.
pretty cool what that guy did. And it really revamped the program, what
It
he
feels
did.
like some
So
of these smaller programs at schools are going to have to go to the path that we did in high school, where you have bake sales and you have fundraising
Yeah.
things and
yeah.
everything you can do to get to that tournament you're trying
Hey
to get.
Tom, get creative. Rob, get
Yeah.
creative, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to do bake sales and get creative. Open the restaurant. I mean, like we said, like get outside the box, because the
Yeah.
guardrails say run it
Yeah.
by us, and it may take us a little bit longer to approve it, but we
Yep.
probably will. Get
That's
creative.
true.
Let's
It's
go.
true.
Yeah.
Very
Back in the
true.
day, we were doing bake sales, but nowadays there's so many more resources that you can use creatively that can get
It's
you more
true.
money quickly. We played in a soccer tournament in France. The tournament was in Mexico City, and we had to raise a lot of money, and it was just a really slow process. That just comes to mind. And nowadays, you have so much social media power, and
Mm,
advertising and all kinds of stuff. There's so many different ways, like you said, creative ways that, more tools.
And that was one of the coolest trips you took in high school, and we just found a creative way to get you there. So
Yeah.
the next one is
soccer
really
tournament.
next one's one I really worry about are the rivalries in all the different sports. It doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, soccer, or whatever it is. The rivalry schools playing each other
Yeah.
is really, really important. And it seems like a lot of those rivalries are dying out as we get into this kind of big time TV contract world.
Yeah.
How do we preserve that so that we continue to have the traditions that we're used to?
Well, I'll give you a thought on that. The first thought I have is I sure hope not, and I'll use the word donor exhaustion one more time. But if you already got an exhausted donor and you take his or her rivalry game away from them, I think
Yeah.
I think you're asking for it. So that's number one.
That's true.
But number two is back to, for the millionth time, back to getting creative. And, so because we're local guys here, guys, I'll use the NC State UNC rivalry if you don't mind, Virginia Tech, whatever you want to do. But here's what I say.
No, I was
I
about to
say-
say UNC, NC State. Can you imagine a world where UNC goes to the Big Ten and all of a sudden that game doesn't play anymore? And that's
I can't.
possible.
Clemson, South Carolina, Michigan, Ohio State. I can't. So here's my deal. Brand rivalry game. Let's brand it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get Coca-Cola to sponsor Ohio State, Michigan. Okay, I can go a step further and tell you that we're going to put Coca-Cola patches on everybody's uniform, because I do believe these college uniforms, at least to an extent, will start having different patches on them besides a
Yeah.
Nike logo or an Adidas logo. I believe they're going
Yeah.
to have to, and I believe some of those funds will be used to generate NIL dollars. But that's my idea there, Rob. And I don't know if anybody's going to listen to me or not, but take these rivalry games, brand the heck out of them, give a corporation and a ton of incentive based on the dollars they donate, and brand them, and let's go, man. We're only going to
They're-
serve Coca-Cola at this game.
They've already scratched the surface on that with Red River Rivalry and Biggest Cocktail Party and all that. You can go one step further and make it more universal,
Yeah,
where every rivalry has some big branding like that.
you bet. That's
Yeah,
what I think.
And I think Virginia Tech will have it no matter what, whether, Virginia Tech goes to the SEC, it doesn't matter. I think that, like you said, the big rivalries will still stick. I think
Heck
the
yeah, man.
the states are going to insist on it.
Give a corporation reason to do it. We've seen a real drop off in corporate sponsors for bowl games because kids have the ability to hold out and sit out of these bowl games now.
Mhm.
But the kid is not going to sit out on their rivalry game because it's a regular season
That's
game.
true. That's true.
So if I'm writing a big check from a marketing perspective, I'd much rather put it towards a large, CBS Fox rivalry than I would a bowl game where I'm not even sure if the top 20 players are even going to be playing in it.
100%.
It's a
Well,
good
Cam,
point.
if people want to reach out to you and contact you, we'd love for you to tell us kind of some of the best ways. I got your email here, got your website, got your X, got your Instagram. What's the best way people can reach out to you?
Please check the site out. It's not perfect, but it gives you a pretty good idea about some of the other services that we provide. And then, I'm an email fiend. And so your email will get answered, and it will get answered quickly. And so, anything I can do to help, and just know that your kid, if any of you are on the phone here who have, kids coming up, no matter what sport, if they have a real interest in branding themselves and want to work hard at it, hey, that's the key, guys. I mean, I say this all the time, but you get involved with a kid and then they don't do the work, and they're only going to let themselves down. But we certainly want to spend time with the kids and branding them if they're very, very serious about, the kind of work that's involved. And it does take time. So
I think if you guys are serious about it, reach out to Cam, reach out to BrandBoss. They're going to do a great job for you. And now, Cam, you and BrandBoss are a friend of the show. So if anybody reaches out to us, obviously we'll pass it along as well.
yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, guys.
That was
Absolutely
great.
awesome stuff.
We really hope to have you back sometime soon.
Well, we'll do that. Let's talk transfer portal, and maybe if I could just do a little teaser for next time. I think that I'm continuing this is the end of the show, but I'm continuing to kind of delve into what may happen from a private equity perspective if private equity continues to try to inch into college sports, and then that potentially could be a show on its own too. But we need to keep our eye on private
I think-
equity and what that might mean at both private and public universities, which is a real can of worms.
I think we want to
PE,
go ahead and invite you back
Interesting.
right now for part two. And I think part two should be the portal And I think it also, we should do a whole series in that show around how to build your brand. I think that's really important. Kids are thinking about it all the time. I mean, I was talking to a high school kid not too long ago that's a friend of mine's kid who's 17 and who's a really excellent lacrosse player, and he's already thinking about his brand. Like he's already on TikTok and everything. So maybe have to try to connect you with him. But anyway, I think how to build your brand might be a really good part of that topic as well.
Great. Enjoyed it, guys. Thanks
Hey,
to
thank
all
you
your
so much.
listeners.
Thanks,
Cam
Cam.
Wyrick, have a great night. And everybody, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop Cam a comment. And he'd love to hear from you.
Great
Thanks
show,
for
guys.
joining us.
Next time on the Sports Guys, we'll see you.